My job today is to try to introduce you to one of the most persevering ways of understanding human life, titled, to use one word, tragic. And if somebody tells you, what's the most tragic thing you have ever experienced in your life, think, what would you answer, just from your own understanding of tragic? How would you answer a question like that if somebody actually told you, what's the most tragic thing that ever happened to you in your own life? Failing an exam? Losing a girlfriend or a boyfriend? I'm sure you can think of much better things than that. Well, today my task is to try to introduce you to a much broader way of understanding, a much deeper way, perhaps. I don't like using that word usually, but a much deeper way, a much more interesting way of getting yourself exposed to what it means that people in the past, throughout history, and today have come to the conclusion, rationally, that the world we live in is tragic. Well, one quick way to kind of put you into the atmosphere, much of what you will be dealing with in 205 from now on will be Plato and rationalistic philosophy. Stuff meaning that people who believe, and exposing you to some people who believe the world is basically made for the human being and for human reason and fits our human reason, that the world we live in is rationalistic. And then the rest of 205, you'll be taking a look at how various peoples have looked at how the world may be understood to be monotheistic, meaning there is a divine being who is concerned for the human race, and so the world is primarily made for humans, and that humans are going to be able to live eternally in fulfillment or in lack of fulfillment, depending on how they decide to live their lives. So you have very different views, okay? You have agnostic views, atheistic views. What we're trying to do now in the first part of 205 is to introduce you primarily through the Greek world, because it's from this tradition, from this great cultural nexus that had brought together much from previous cultures. The Greeks had interacted with all of the cultures of the Middle East, and even some from the Far East through commerce and all of this. So when we talk about Greek, by the way, we're not talking about what you think of just as the Greek you're reading if you're a scholar in these texts, but a whole tradition, a whole way of understanding human life that has emerged from an ongoing interaction of many cultures with each other. And so the one I'm trying to help you with today is a tragic understanding of life. And primarily what I'm going to try to help you understand is that the word tragic primarily has always meant something heroic. So not something negative, a failure, something like that. But that on the contrary, the word tragic in its best sense has always been understood as heroic, as challenging you and me as human beings to live our lives at its highest level, as authentic as possible, as responsible as possible, as desiring to be excellent, to be a somebody and not a nobody, which hopefully you've already dealt with in Homer. So, the background for it, of course, and for you to understand the play we're reading, Oedipus the king, the man who is doomed to kill his father and marry his mother. If you've read the story, many ways of interpreting literature. I'm going to try to give you an interpretation that I'm going to claim will help you to get into the cultural setting, the intellectual setting of the times, and what it is that people later on have found in the tragic literature to inspire them in their own centuries, in their own cultures, to write other Oedipus stories or different sort of literature and philosophical writings that primarily present human life as tragic. Its primary concern is the heroic. The other primary concern is to be intellectually aware, not blind, to have insight and recognize that the world you live in was not made for your happiness. Why should you think that you should be happy? Were any promises made to you before, when you came into this life? No promises were made, no promises broken. That's one way of finally taking a look at the tragic world that I'm going to be trying to help you be exposed to, see what you think about it, discuss it, reject it, find other interpretations if you wish. But really, my focus is to help you understand something that has become very pervasive throughout the centuries in literature and in philosophy. The world is basically tragic. So primarily now, I need to take you a little bit through some of this material on the first page of the fly sheet. Origins of drama, religious festivals, Homeric epics. Already stuff was coming through in a very dramatic way in the religious festivals through Homer and the narration, the narrative of the Homeric epics. You had lots of dramatic stuff happening. It's at this time, roughly 534 years before Christ, that in Athens, the first Thespis is from which we get Thespian society, drama society, Thespian. It is at this time that, roughly speaking, what we consider great drama started to be presented to us through the great tragedians as well as through the great comic writers, the writers of comedy like Aristophanes. So comedy and tragedy emerged at this period, and the whole venture in the Western world of theater commenced at this point. Primarily now, the three names you want to remember: Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, Aristophanes for comedy. Primarily now, however, you need to stop at the fourth point there, democracy. This was one of the first attempts at democracy that we know about in any detail, where the Athenians believed they were living institutionally, governmentally, socioeconomic, politically, if you like, whichever word you wish to use, in a form of democracy. Democracy develops, means different things in different times, different places. So very specifically here, it simply meant that many, many, many more people than in a monarchy or in an empire or anything like that, or in an oligarchy, that many people were involved. And the many people at that time happened to be males, all the free male citizens, because other Greeks who had been enslaved in their wars with each other sometimes were amongst the slaves, and the slaves was the economic structure of society, slavery. So women, of course, were not given the vote. And basically, therefore, Aristotle defined a good democracy as a community of 10,000 to 100,000 people. Less than 10,000, you wouldn't have a survivable community. More than 100,000, it would become too global, and you would lose yourself. It should be sufficiently limited, so that you can be a full participant humanly in everything that happens in your society. And this was the ideal of the polis, the P-O-L-I-S. So democracy brings us down into, under the conceptual framework, the second point there, the polis. For the Athenian, their polis, from which we get political, city, city-state are the English terms that translate it in your translations, but think polis. Because for the Athenian and for the mentality of the people watching the play Oedipus the King or attending it and living it, the polis is more than just a city-state as we would think of it today. It had achieved a kind of philosophical human meaning. It's the necessary condition for you and me to live a truly human life outside of this kind of a community and this kind of a democratically run community. Humans cannot be fully human. So the non-human people in this play are first and foremost Tiresias. Tiresias the prophet, and so you need to realize prophet can mean many, many different things. You have to see what it means in each text, in each culture. The prophet here is someone who is very closely related to the divine, and in this particular sense to the one god, Apollo, who is the main god of this particular work. And so he knows things that others do not know. He's blind, but he can see things that ordinary humans cannot know. He has insight. Oedipus, the ruler of the city, has sight, but as we will see in the play, his problem is he lacks insight. He doesn't know who he is. So basically, Tiresias, however, is accused by Oedipus in this play. Please don't skip over that when you're trying to interpret what Sophocles is saying through the play and the relationship between the different characters. The main attack of Oedipus on the prophet is that the prophet does not care about humanity, does not care about the polis. He only cares about his own well-being, his own pain. And so I'm going to read just a few lines for you from the interaction, which I hope you will read on pages 176 and on in the book. The story is basically that this polis, now the polis of Thebes, which Oedipus himself has now become the king of. And to make a long story short, because I don't have time, the basic story is that primarily Oedipus thinks he is the child of the king and queen of Corinth. In fact, he is the child of the king and queen of Thebes, but he does not know this, because as a child, because his parents, his true parents in Corinth, heard a prophecy that had come from Apollo that they would have a son who would kill them. So they try to get rid of this son. They give it to a shepherd. All of this is in the text. This shepherd, however, doesn't want to kill the baby, expose the baby, gives it to another shepherd, the Theban shepherd. The first one was the Corinthian shepherd. The Corinthian shepherd gives the baby to his friend, the Theban shepherd. The Theban shepherd takes the baby. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. I really shouldn't try to improvise after having a course. It's the other way around. Okay, from the Corinthian shepherd, the Theban shepherd, the parents were Theban, and they give the baby to the Theban shepherd. The Theban shepherd gives the baby to the Corinthian shepherd. The Corinthian shepherd gives the baby to the king and queen of Corinth because they can't have a child, and they're very happy to adopt Oedipus. But they never let Oedipus know that he's adopted. He thinks he is their son. At one point, having some kind of a nice party, student party or something, I don't know what, somebody starts to mock Oedipus because they've heard a certain prophecy and it tells him, you're going to kill your father and marry your mother. You think you're somebody? And so he hears this horrible prophecy, takes it seriously as a rational human being living in that context. You don't take these things lightly. He goes to Apollo, the source of, the main source of truth for anything in those days was Delphi and Apollo. So he does the rational thing. He goes there and he tries to do something about it. What does Apollo do? All he does is he spurns him. He tells him, meaning he doesn't help him whatsoever. He just repeats the prophecy. Your future is horrible. Okay, you're going to kill your father, marry your mother. Once again, the rational Oedipus decides to do something about this. Leave home. He's not going to sit around waiting for the moment when he's going to kill his father, marry his mother. So he tries to, run away from home. In going away from home, he's moving towards Thebes. And he is attacked by a Range Rover and all kinds of people who attack him. And the leader of this convoy attacks him. He kills them all, except for one, because it's a story. And that person has to come back and tell the story. Remember, this is a play. He kills everybody, except for one person who happens to be the Theban shepherd, we find out later on. Okay, he goes into Thebes. What's happening at the entrance to Thebes? The Sphinx. The Sphinx there's this curse on Thebes. No handsome young man can come in or out of Thebes without answering the riddle of the Sphinx. What walks on 4 in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 at dusk at the evening? What's the answer? Drop quiz. The human, man. All right? Now, for some reason, the way this is how Sophocles is presenting it, nobody has been able to answer this question. They didn't take their CS courses seriously, you see. But primarily, basically, Oedipus comes along, and he's the only one who's able to answer this riddle. Now, in this system, the way things work in this cosmos, in this universe, there's no absolute power, and the Sphinx has to abide by the rules. And the rules are that if somebody answers this riddle, then this, the curse is lifted. So he comes into Thebes. The people of Thebes are delighted. They've been rid of the curse now of the Sphinx. So what do you think they do? They elect him to be king. Why? Because their king has just been assassinated. See how it's getting complicated? Who is the king who was assassinated? The guy who attacked him. He didn't know this was the king of Thebes. He just knew somebody was attacking him. What else do we know as an audience? This guy was his actual daddy. This was his papa. This was his true father. The king of Thebes. In self-defense, he kills him, and thereby he fulfills the prophecy, you see. Now, what else happens? There's a widow now. There's a queen who has no husband. And what do they do in those days? Okay? The newly elected king, He's Aisami. He's elected, by the way. He prides himself on this. He didn't inherit the kingship. He was elected. See, the democratic aspects of this play are very important. And so he gets the queen as his wife. And who is the queen? His mommy, his mother. So the prophecy now has been solved. But what has poor old Oedipus done all the time? Tried to use his reason in the best way he possibly can to avoid such a horrible thing. This is his problem in the story. Nothing else. All the other things are just human symptoms. Everything, the main thing here is the overconfidence in the power of human reason, which is basically blind according to the tragedians. So from the first thing you want to see at this point, from what I've said, from this tragic point of view, what we have, our greatness is reason. As a human being, our most important power is reason. He uses reason to avoid the horror of killing his father and mother. He uses reason to solve the riddle of the Sphinx. He uses reason then for a number of years, and that's how the play starts. They come to him and they are all giving in their testimony. You're such a wonderful ruler. All right? So he is being presented by Sophocles first and foremost as the man of reason, as the rationalist par excellence, the human who believes reason can know everything. Now, what's the tragic message of the whole story? Is that don't overreach your true powers. Know thyself. Know who you are. Know your true limits. Reason is wonderful. You must use it. You have nothing else to use. You must use it to know yourself and to serve the community of humanity. But don't expect reward, because you never know what's really going on in the universe that you're a part of. You are not the universe. The cosmos wasn't made for you. All right? You're there. Okay. You play your part in this cosmos. You do your best. You be a somebody, not a nobody. You be remembered in history. You get the immortality of name. You help humanity, all right? You have self-respect, dignity, but you don't get any external reward because there's nothing and no one to give you an external reward. In fact, most likely, this universe is set in such a way that you're going to be pretty much frustrated and disappointed and disillusioned, and you're going to realize that what you thought was true, the opposite was the case. So this is the atmosphere of the tragic world at a time in Athens when they were competing ideologically and intellectually with the rationalists. So they were coexisting at this time. The people like Socrates and people like Sophocles, the author of this one, were coexisting at the same time. And so they lived in the same socioeconomic situation. They were taught in the same schools. Everything, had all similar kind of environment and all of this. But the human mind comes to different understandings of what life is all about. And that's what we tried to tell you about the humanities. That's what university was meant to be like in the first place. A place where that's our main question. And then we do everything else, the science and the degrees we get and all this. But all of that is meant to enhance our ability to learn more and more about what is our true humanity. And so the rationalists were saying our true humanity lies in more the way we use reason more and more, the way we reorganize societies, you'll see with Plato, the institutions of education, all the institutions of society rationally. The more we can rationally approach things and change things, then we can be happy. The cosmos is for us on that basis. The tragedians at the same time were rejecting this. They're saying, you're so naive, you poor Socrates and Plato and all these people. Haram. You really think that's what life is about? We agree with you, and I want you to see this point. We agree with you. Reason is very important. We should serve the polis. We should be a somebody, not a nobody. All right? But don't expect reward. No promises made, no promises broken. So this is the context for what's happening. Now, Oedipus is told now, at the beginning of this play, there's a new plague, a new curse now has come upon Thebes. And all life has stopped at every level. And read them for yourselves, the first text. Everything has stopped. They come to him, the people come to him. See, democracy. The people come to him. And they tell him, you are so great. You have been such a wonderful ruler. You are the one who saved us from the Sphinx. You're the this, you're the that. Okay? Now you are the only one who can save us from this horrible curse. Notice how Sophocles presents Oedipus, not how somebody is going to tell you how to understand Oedipus according to some later theory, which is fine. Great stuff inspires great thought. But first, let the people speak for themselves. First, try as much as possible to put yourself into the framework of the times and of the people and what they were trying to do, especially if it still has life, because the interpretation I've given you today is still a living interpretation among many others. I'm choosing this particular one because I think this will help you more be in this exposure to the Athenian Greek world that we are now entering into with Sophocles and then with Plato. So what does Oedipus do? Rational, political leader. Okay, he investigates. He sends to, once again, to Delphi, to Apollo, because this is the source of the deepest truths of things. This is the Brussels or the Washington or the Tehran or the Moscow or the Mubarak Shu, if you want to get real serious knowledge today. Okay, in those days, everybody would go to Delphi at Apollo, and then their priestesses would go into a trance, and supposedly the god Apollo would possess them, and then they would give forth these prophecies, that Oedipus is going to kill his father, marry his mother. Next week, you'll see that Socrates is said to be the wisest man in Athens. So he sends to investigate there. What happens? Creon comes back from there, and Creon is the interim leader before Oedipus takes over when the king was killed. Also his brother-in-law. And therefore, anyway, forget it for the time being. I'm ad-libbing, so I have to be very careful not to lose track of what I'm saying. Basically, he sends to Apollo comes and says, a king has been killed, and no vengeance has been taken. I don't know whether in your study of Homer you've already been introduced to this. The cosmos is a system, and it works according to its own laws. And when the law is broken, there is automatic nemesis. It's not a rock band. Nemesis, right? Which is retribution. And so the system adjusts itself. And therefore Oedipus is paying for something that broke the system, in previous generations of his family. Nothing ever goes by. Time sees all, the chorus will tell Oedipus at the end. So basically, he is told that the king was killed. Nobody has taken vengeance for it. This is the source of a plague. So Oedipus starts to question, using his mind, rational political mind, what happened? King was killed, you didn't revenge him. So Creon says, well, we were busy with the Sphinx, and, our king had just been killed, and, I didn't sleep well last night, and I was on the IT, and he starts giving him blah, 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 excuses. You can disagree with my interpretations, by the way, but, that's how I read and how I've done this play twice, lived with it for over 8 months, word by word, and acting it out with the whole, with two troops. So I think that's what is meant in that text there, that Creon, like everybody else, is being presented as somebody who's only interested in making excuses for themselves, not taking responsibility, not worrying about being a nobody, the only one who's interested in being a somebody, you see, and therefore a model. So, great literature gives you models. You can agree with them, you can disagree with them. But I'm presenting you that Oedipus is being presented as the model of humanity. Sophocles, the priest of the god Apollo. Apollo had given us these two commandments at the bottom. By now, he's associated with these two principles of life. That's number 3 on the first sheet. Know thyself. Balance is best. Know thyself means be active in discovering your true identity, your limitations especially, but as well as your powers. And live life according to these ideals, in other words. And balance is best means whatever you're doing with the right balance. You're a student, seek to get the 90s, not the 70s. Not the 70, that's a balance between 50 and 90. Balance here is meaning the best. And you'll see this developed in philosophy with Aristotle. The balance is the best. Do your best. You're a student, do your best. Work for the 90. You're a political leader, do your best for the polis. So he's trying to do his best, and rationally, depending upon his own reason, his own analysis of what's happening. So, of course, he wonders, how can Creon have left this murder unrepaired, leaving the polis exposed to all this horrible stuff? So he takes the next step. You don't get anything from the divine, or you get what you can. You go to the prophetic. Tiresias, the prophet, he brings him in. And this is Tiresias. He goes down on his knees to him, very respectful, no sense of whatsoever of disrespect. On the contrary, this is his attitude to Tiresias. What does Tiresias say? How terrible to see the truth. You see, he has insight. He's blind, but to see the truth when the truth is only pain to him who sees. This is tragedy, by the way. Truth does not make you free. Truth does not make you happy. The truth can cause you great pain. The truth can be horrible. When the truth is only pain to him who sees. I knew it well, but I put it from my mind, else I never would have come. Oedipus, what's this? Why so grim, so dire? Just send me home. You bear your burdens, I'll bear mine. It's better that way, please believe me. Oedipus, strange response, unlawful, unfriendly too, to the polis that bred and reared you. You withhold the word of God? I fail to see that your own words are so well timed. I'd rather not have the same thing said of me. For the love of God, don't turn away, not if you know something. We beg you, all of us on our knees. No disrespect. Just the political horror that somebody can tell us how to solve the problem. And he doesn't want to tell us because it's painful. Wawa, busul wawa. Okay, this is the wawa mentality, pain. All right? Pain is your worst enemy, okay? Tiresias, none of you knows, and I will never reveal my dreadful secrets, not to say your own, ballashi hitfi, your own secrets, yani you killed your mother. Oedipus, what? You know and you won't tell? You're bent on betraying us, destroying Thebes, the polis, humanity. I'd rather not cause pain for you or me. Circle the word pain and circle the word city or state in this thing when you're doing a text analysis. And then you'll have Sophocles speak for himself rather than to read some interpretation of the play. I'd rather not cause pain for you or me. So why this useless interrogation? You will get nothing from me. Nothing? You scum of the earth. You'd enrage a heart of stone. You won't talk. Nothing moves you. Out with it once and for all. You criticize my temper. Naughty, naughty, you got angry, Habibi. You see, this whole notion of the anger somehow is an absolute evil, you know. Anger at the right time and the right place. This is the political leader confronted with somebody who has the solution to the problem of humanity, and he doesn't want to tell him because he wants busulwawa. He's afraid of pain, all right? He's scared of, if you don't know busulwawa, look it up on the Google, okay? So this is, you know, a lot of stuff has been written about, you know, that his temper, you know, his tragic flaw is something, you know, yes, this is a problem, but it's the problem of his rationality, not his temper. He thinks he knows everything. He thinks his reason can give him the truth. He thinks he has sight and he's blind. So don't, you know, focus on the temper. This is coming from the person who thinks pain is the worst thing in the world. It doesn't come from the mouth of somebody respectable in this particular work. Tiresias, just because he's a prophet. He's a, you know, he's a Maggie Farah, he's a Layla Abdul Latif, he's a Mike Fraley, you know, he's at that level of what prophet might mean, okay? No concern for humanity. No concern for the, you know, for doing anything. Oedipus, who could restrain his anger hearing you? In a sense, it's wrong not to get angry when you should get angry. But don't get out of control. Don't get angry for the wrong reason. Shu mafi asha. Shu mafi delivery. If you don't know all this is the most important thing you should be learning by living in Lebanon at this period, all right? So anger can be, of course, something damaging. But anger itself is a source of strength so that you can use it in the right time, in the right place. Fight your own injustice before somebody else's injustice. What outrage. You spurn the city. I'm not going to go on with this, but if you read those pages, notice, let Sophocles speak for himself. Don't read texts about it. Read the primary text. See how Sophocles is dealing with this figure. So he brings the prophet. When the prophet doesn't want to tell him, what happens? Political mind, Mahek, Lebanese. Everybody, not just Lebanese. I'm a Lebanese, so I can say this. I wouldn't let anybody else say it. But, you know, conspiracy. Conspiracy. Mu'amara. Okay? Creon had the temporal power. Tiresias has the religious power. They came together, killed the king. He doesn't know he killed the king. They must have assassinated the king so they could take over power. But I came and spoiled it for them. By coming at that moment, Oedipus, he's elected king, he spoiled their mu'amara. You see how the political mind is working? Okay, you know, it's flawed, it's blind, but what the tragedian is telling you, that's the human mind. This is the greatest mind, the only one who could solve the riddle Right? The most brilliant of all humans. That's how Sophocles is presenting humans in dialogue with the rationalists. You can never understand literature if you don't put it into its cultural context and see how people are speaking with each other. Dialogue. What will come, que sera, sera, even if I shroud it all in silence. What will come, etc., etc. Okay, so what does he then do? He goes on, investigating properly, using his mind, bringing all the eyewitnesses, trying to bring everything that a human can do to investigate a thing. He does it all. And then, little by little, people start to realize this is the guy who killed his king. And not only that, but this is the guy who killed his father and is sleeping with his mother. And so what do they all tell him inevitably? Stop the search. Stop seeking the truth. Stop seeking to know yourself. Stop seeking to do balance's best, do your own the best possible way. Stop, because it's going to cause pain. If he listens to that, what would happen? Let's say he had listened to all the warnings and stopped the search, because he's going to wind up being the one who is the cause, and he's going to have to be punished and exiled. Had he not gone on, what would have happened to Thebes? Don't forget that. Thebes is under a plague, a curse, a horrible curse. It would never have been, so he's saving the polis again. He saved the polis the first time from the Sphinx. By continuing to do what he does, he saves humanity. That's the symbolic message of this poem. Do your best. Follow Apollo's commands, but don't expect reward. And don't let pain be your main enemy. Let mediocrity be your own enemy, rather than that. And so he, one after the other comes. Finally, the truth is discovered. And then what is the message of the truth? And I'm going to just read these two things to you. This is the climax. When it is discovered who he is, he, of course, punishes himself, takes responsibility, doesn't make excuses. They tell him, what God made you do this? He could have said, yes, it's the gods, fate, determinism, my genome, the society, the politics, okay? He says, yes, Apollo, but it was my own hand. Of course we're conditioned, but we're free, we're responsible, all right? This is the message of Sophocles when he has Oedipus respond to the chorus who's giving him a way out, saying, what God made you do this? It was Apollo, but it was my own hand. He takes responsibility. See, even though he's not guilty subjectively, he takes responsibility for the consequences of what he did. And so, what does the chorus say at the climax point? Notice they never call him wicked, ever. And the whole end of the work, when you do it as a play, you see how it works for him, for Sophocles. It's lamentation. And lamenting in this sense, you lament something great, you lament something dear, you lament something precious, not condemnation. You're wicked, you got your just deserts, you deserve it, etc. Lamentation. You lament when somebody great gets something they really don't deserve. This is tragedy, that the world works like that. But there is greatness in this world, the greatness of the human, what the human does. That's why it inspires much of atheistic existentialism in the 20th century. But it inspires every human, not just atheists. Even people who believe the world is different from that admire this kind of an approach, that you don't live for reward. لا خوفا من الجحيم ولا طمعا بالنعيم بل حبا بك يا الله. Which Egyptian square that was popular in the political world the last few years is named after this person? Rabi'a al-Adawiyya. Right? She made this statement. She may not have been the first one to make it, but she made this statement in her Islamic world, that her Islam is not because she's afraid of hell or she wants some kind of reward in heaven, but it's out of her love for God. So, the notion of doing something for its own sake, for the sake of humanity, not doing it because you want some kind of a reward. Now, many people believe you will get a reward, and that's nice, but to do it for the reward is the point. Don't live for reward and to go away from pain. You naturally want reward, and you naturally want to avoid pain, but your humanity is capable of, that's the message of this work, you can be Oedipus-like, you can do something for humanity. You can be a Prometheus in the original icon for tragedy. Let me just at least show you the picture of this. All this is on the web, by the way. You can go through it all if... Since I didn't use it, I normally do, but this time I decided to try something different, hoping that I've been able to convey something to you that if I went more slowly. Prometheus is the legendary figure in Greek mythology who steals into heaven, the Mount Olympus, where the gods relax. And they were busy with something else, obviously. He steals fire and brings fire to mankind. This is the benefactor of mankind. Prometheus, not the gods, who for whatever reason don't want to give fire to humanity. So Prometheus is kind of, this is the image, the universal image for human beings, whatever their belief system is, whether they believe the world is tragic, rationalistic, monotheistic, random, whatever. Okay? But the focus on the human being and what the human being is to do is the heart of this particular work, telling you he did not live for happiness. He lived to do the best thing he knew how to do. And so when you get to the climax of the whole work, and this is on page, all of these things are on your sheets, by the way, if you look through them, but on the climax on page 233, you generations of men, adding the total of all your lives, I find they come to nothing. Does there exist, is there a man on earth who seizes more joy than just a dream, a vision? And the vision no sooner dawns than dies, blazing into oblivion. You are my great example, my paradigm. You are my great example. You, your life, your destiny, Oedipus. He's the example. He's the model. He's not a naughty guy who got angry at the prophet and has a tragic flaw and all that rationalistic stuff. Okay? You can believe that, you know. But if you're really listening to Sophocles, I think, and of course this is for you to discuss and debate and reject, I think Sophocles is telling us something else. You are my great example. You, your life, your destiny. Oedipus, man of misery. I count no man blessed. And then it tells him how great he was. But now look at what's happened to him. Time, all-seeing time has dragged you to the light, you see, and lamenting. And so if you didn't get the point, at the very end of the play, you have, at the very end of the play, page 251, the chorus, at the very end, just in case we still didn't get the point. Sorry. I'm an old man. Old men do these things. So, you know, I hope it doesn't offend anyone, okay? But just in case we still haven't gotten the point, the chorus says, people of Thebes, my countrymen, look on Oedipus. He solved the famous riddle with his brilliance. See, the man, the rationalist, the man of reason. He rose to power, a man beyond all power. Okay, he's combining wisdom and power, rationality and power. This is the model. But what does he get? Now, what a black sea of terror has overwhelmed him. And the message, now as we keep our watch and wait the final day, count no man happy till he dies, free of pain at last. Okay, now, I never preach, I hope, in CS. I don't want to convince you to believe the world is tragic, but I do want to invite you to take a deeper look at it than sometimes some of the interpretations that are common, which are very nice. I mean, and they reflect more their own views, as Nietzsche would say. All philosophers are simply giving us their autobiography. I'm giving you mine, you know, and so I may be totally wrong, but I'm hoping to lead you into thinking about tragedy in the context of the philosophical debate now between, is the world rationalistic, is the world open to our scientific and philosophical and mathematical and rationalistic investigation, will this really give us insight, will we be able to know everything about life? The rationalists were tending to tell us that. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle being the big names, of course, but it had a 400-year tradition before Socrates. And the tragedians coming on and saying, Habibi, we're just as intelligent as you are, we're just as rational, we're just as mathematical and scientific, and we know all about that, but we think you have a bit of a blind spot. Right? You think you're seeing, and you're not seeing, you're blind. The world wants us to live this way, all of us, yes, according to the Athenian ideal and democracy and all of this, but live realistically, otherwise you'll be shattered. See, prepare yourself for life, do your best, but be ready to be unrewarded. Be ready for the hero to be, or the good person or the moral person to suffer. So what I have for you on these sheets are a lot of detail, and when I try to go through them, I sometimes don't get, I'm not able to present the meat of what I'm trying to say. On the very end, the very last page, these bullet points are kind of a conclusion, because the term conclusion comes at the bottom of the previous page. What is human life all about? What's human life all about? I mean, that's the question of humanity. That all of everything we're doing, whether it's in science or in politics, everything should be in one way or another from a mature human intellect and mind and person, trying to understand more and more what life is all about. Okay, well, this is one aspect of life, certainly, and here are some points for you to think about, for yourself to discuss, etc. What time? Let me see. If I have a minute, I have some more time. How nice. Okay, let me say something, therefore, about on the very last page. I never have time for this. Further reflections on the tragic. Let me now help you to see a little bit more in terms of how the term tragic and the term comic can be used outside of the ordinary way you might think of it. I hope now you've seen that tragic does not mean just something bad that happened or some tragedy or you see I'm even using it. It has to have some greatness there, being unrewarded, not rewarded. Some act of heroism, some person really doing their best, some real great thing happening, but that person is not being rewarded because, in fact, life is not about living for reward. That has to be somehow, in one way or another, be presented in something that truly would allow us to call it properly tragic in this Greek tradition. Comic, since we talked about Aristophanes at this time also. Socrates, Thucydides, Sophocles at the same time, Prometheus, Aeschylus, and Euripides, the two other great tragedians. They produced comedy. The Clouds, for example, by Aristophanes. And here he's making fun. Oh, come on. He's making fun of Socrates in his play. See, so you can make fun of anybody, and their heads weren't chopped off, I guess. I don't know, because they lived on. But Aristophanes. So primarily, what's really the heart of tragedy? What's the heart of comedy? Beyond sort of the normal meanings. Many meanings, but here I'm just going to offer for your thought. A comic view of human life is a hopeful view of human life. So in comedy and theater, we have high comedy, we have low comedy, we have farce, we have all kinds of different range of what we call comedy. And not all of them are ha-ha and farce and slapstick. Comedy generally means that the whole atmosphere of this work is that things work for the human being. That when you do your best, you can change things, you can make a difference. Promises are made. And so therefore promises can be broken. No hope, with respect to the comic, which is hopeful, in other words, in tragedy, there's no hope, but note this, also there's no despair. That's why tragedy is a very difficult philosophy of life. There's no despair here, because despair means there's no meaning. There is meaning. Life is full of meaning. Serve humanity. Make a name for yourself. Be excellent. Be a somebody. Meaning. There's lots of meaning. All right? Despair would mean no meaning. So in tragedy, there's neither hope. Hope means something solid. You can be sure. Promises are made somehow. All right? Hope. You're following some serious promises that you think, make sense, either from God or from your reason or something. Hope, okay? Whereas despair, no meaning. What does it offer us, therefore? Dignity, something not everybody is interested in anymore, okay? Dignity, your own self-respect. Grandeur, this is what gives nobility for the people who believe in this. This is the true grandeur of our human life. Through suffering, insight was the slogan for the tragedians. How do you get insight? Remember, Oedipus can see, but he doesn't have insight. Tiresias can't see, but he has insight. All right? How do we get insight? Oh, through suffering. See, therefore, suffering is not just negative. Nobody wants it. This is not masochism or sadism. But take a look at suffering in your life. Suffering has made you a better person, supposedly. You may disagree. But that's the point of the tragedian. If there's no suffering, Gilgamesh would never have become a human. He would have been pre-Enkidu. Gilgamesh post-Enkidu has become human. Pre-Enkidu, he was just an emperor, a dictator, a mafia boss, a nice guy, basically speaking. He wasn't human. All right? It's only after Enkidu that he becomes human, because another human has come into his life who is his equal. So basically, insight comes through suffering. Only through the suffering of the fight with Enkidu, where he's almost defeated, His pride is hurt there. And then the more suffering when he sees Enkidu dying in this horrible way. And then he sees the vision into the afterworld, and I'm going to go there. All right? Now insight. Where is it coming from? Suffering. Before, he didn't suffer. You know. He could reject Ishtar. Great text there, if you read that aspect there. Okay, so man is man, msayyar or mkhayyar, free or determined. A heavy philosophical, theological exercise that's very interesting, but don't take it too seriously, all right? All great literature in one way or another tells you we are both free and determined. Concretely speaking, of course we're determined. So many things determine us. But also, once we get more and more aware of our own humanity, there's freedom there. This is why Oedipus says, it was my own hand that did it. Apollo, yes, it was Apollo, but it was my own hand. We're both. Man is not free or determined. Man is free and determined. Homer had no problem of deciding which. He was describing life, as great poetry does. Life is both free and determined. Through your own recklessness, you earn suffering beyond what is given. What is given, you're determined. Beyond what is given, it's you. This is the first lines of Homer. So free or determined becomes, when philosophers want to start to have nice things that they can write books about and have fights with people who don't agree with them. And tragic choice, no-win situations. In life, you'll often find yourself in a no-win situation. You have to use your mind and your integrity. That's the point of the tragedian. To choose the lesser of the two evils, and not to just choose it because it suits you, but choose it because it's the only one you can choose, but it's the best one for humanity. It's the best one for the polis. It's the best one to keep your self-respect. The Peloponnesian War is the background for this. You don't do Thucydides in this course, but the Peloponnesian War is the background. They were killing each other. Civil wars, like not today where we all love each other and we don't fight each other. All the Greeks were fighting each other all over in the Peloponnesian War, right? And this was the context. And they killed Socrates. They murdered Socrates. They assassinated, they executed Socrates. This is the context that these people are writing in, all right? So it's not like a university where they're taking CBSB courses and writing books so they can become famous and make millions of dollars and kick other people out who deserve it better. And this is the world we live in today. Right? They wanted to put some meaning into life. So basically then, poetic insight, rationalistic analysis. These are the two things we're being introduced to in this first part of 205. Poetic insight, Homer. All right, he was the educator of the Greeks. All right, he had insight. Okay, Tiresias has insight. Okay, the insight can be positive, the insight can be negative. But awareness, poetry takes you into the depths of our concrete human life. Rationalistic analysis, theory, abstraction, very important, or we wouldn't have the world we have. But it doesn't hit the heart of our humanity. If you're following astrophysics and evolutionary biology today to see who you are as a human being, salam alaikum, but I think you're going to be disappointed. Right? You're going to have to look somewhere else. You're going to have to look into the poetic insight, into the religious world, the spiritual world, that whole ocean of human field, which we're somehow being told is second rate. Okay? That's what the poets, that's what the Sophocles and that were trying to tell the rationalists, hey, wait a minute, we're happy with your science and with all this, but, don't go too far. You need insight. Rationalistic analysis, wonderful. You'll see this with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and then, anybody else. You go into the whole world we're living in today. Very, very important. Or you wouldn't be able to do. But the rationalistic analysis, it may never give you insights, and you may wind up being like Oedipus, thinking you know more than you know and making judgments on that basis. Whereas if you're open, you realize your limitation always, that you're always progressing, you're always needing to learn from other cultures, other people. You're open to all kinds of sources for insight, rationalistic analysis. That's our 201, if you like, and 205, the first part of 205, what you're doing now. I hope you've gotten something from all of this. It's a world of material. I would have liked to be able to do more, but I hope you're able to get going with your teachers.